question in the hall that it gets to your question. The question in the hall on foreign aid. Yes, ma'am.
The American people are suffering in our country right now. Why do we continue to send foreign aid to other countries when we need all the help we can get for ourselves?
Governor Perry, what about that? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I think it's time for this country to have a very real debate about foreign aid. Clearly, there are places. As a matter of fact, I think it's time for us to have a very serious discussion about defunding the United Nations. When you think about the Palestinian Authority circumventing those Oslo Accords and going to New York to try to create the conflict and to have themselves approved as a state without going through the proper channels is a travesty. And I think it's time not only to have that entire debate about all of our foreign aid, but in particular the UN. Why are we funding that organization?
Governor Romney, should foreign aid be eliminated?
Foreign aid has several elements. One of those elements is defense, is to make sure that we are able to have the defense resources we want in certain places of the world. That probably ought to fall under the Department of Defense budget rather than a foreign aid budget. Part of it is humanitarian aid around the world. I happen to think it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to borrow money from the Chinese to go give to another country for humanitarian aid. We ought to get the Chinese to take care of the people that are taking that borrowed money today.
Yeah, they'll do it.
Finally, there's a portion of our foreign aid that allows us to carry out our activities in the world, such as what's happening in Pakistan, where we're supplying our troops in Afghanistan through Pakistan. But let me tell you, we're spending more on foreign aid than we ought to be spending, and Congressman Paul asked, is there a place we can cut the budget? Let me tell you where we cut the budget. Discretionary accounts we bring back to 2008 level. We get rid of Obamacare. Number 3, we take Medicaid, turn it back to the states, grow it at only 1% to 2% per year. Number 4, we cut federal employment by at least 10% through attrition. And finally, we say to federal employees, you're not going to make more money than the people in the private sector who are paying for you. We link their compensation.
Congressman Paul.
On foreign aid, that should be the easiest thing to cut. It's not authorized in the Constitution that we can take money from you and give it to particular countries around the world. To me, foreign aid is taking money from poor people in this country and giving it to rich people in poor countries, and it becomes weapons of war, essentially. No matter how well motivated it is.
Congressman Paul, would you cut aid to Israel?
I would cut all foreign aid. I would treat everybody equally and fairly. And I don't think aid to Israel actually helps them. I think it teaches them to be dependent. We're on a bankruptcy course, and look at what's the result of all that foreign aid we gave to Egypt. I mean, their dictator that we pumped up, we spent all these billions of dollars, and now there's a more hostile regime in Egypt, and that's what's happening all around Israel. That foreign aid makes Israel dependent on us. It softens them for their own economy, and they should have their sovereignty back. They should be able to deal with their neighbors at their own will.
Should we cut foreign aid to Israel?
No, we should not be cutting foreign aid to Israel. Israel is our greatest ally.
Yeah, and lo and behold, Ron is right. You do create sort of a nanny type of thing going on there. Coming from me, the only experience I have with this is with an ex-wife that I pay child support to. She and her current, I guess, fiance or whatever you'd call him, have a big drug problem, and I actually fund that. I fund their drug problem through child support. Now, yes, there's the argument that, well, all the money goes in a pot. You can't say that your specific dollars go towards the drug thing, but I can say, well, if they had less money, they would be able to afford it. Either way, the whole point here is responsibility. Responsibility. It's a word that a lot of people nowadays shy away from, and they try to hide from, and try to who's responsible for this? I don't want to be responsible. I don't want to take ownership for my own and right here they're talking about for a country. They're saying their country doesn't. Oh, we need to aid them. Well, as far as I knew, Israel wasn't like Haiti, they weren't poor like Haiti. They weren't a third world country. But if you're giving them a paycheck, let's say, then they can figure that into their budget and thus adjust their spending accordingly, which is irresponsible. Aid is one thing. Oh, you're down. Okay, I'll help you out this one time. But if you're doing it continuously, it's like a paycheck. They could figure it into their budget. Irresponsible. That means they're not covering their own asses for their own country. So, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go with Ron on this. I'm going to have to go with Ron. Even though, notice, Ron didn't say we shouldn't be allies. He didn't say we shouldn't be friends. He just said, look, he agreed with the woman that asked the question initially. We've got our own problems to deal with. He didn't say this, but we shouldn't fund it. Therefore, I imagine that's what he's going for with the answer to the lady's question, is that, yeah, we have plenty of people that need help here. Let's help them first. Then we'll think about other stuff.
The fact that the biggest problem with this administration and foreign policy is that President Obama, as the first president since Israel declared her sovereignty, put daylight between the United States and Israel. That heavily contributed to the current hostilities that we see in the Middle East region. Cutting back on foreign aid is one thing. Being reimbursed by nations that we have liberated is another. We should look to Iraq and Libya to reimburse us for part of what we have done to liberate these nations. Now, I need to add something on this issue of negotiating for hostages. This is a very serious issue. For any candidate to say that they would release the prisoners at Guantanamo in exchange for a hostage would be absolutely contrary to the historical nature of the United States and what we do in our policy. That's naive. We cannot do that.
Give money to our friends like Israel.
You have 30 seconds, Congressman Paul.
Yes.
I gotta go.
Matter of fact, I don't want to make a statement. I want to ask a question. Are you all willing to condemn Ronald Reagan for changing weapons for hostages out of Iran? We all know that was done. That, yeah, well, that's not, Iran was a sovereign country. It was not a terrorist organization, number one.
Well, they were our good friends.
They're not our good friends, but they're a sovereign country, just like the Palestinian Authority is not the good friends of Israel.
He negotiated for hostages.
There's a role for, we negotiate with hostages with the Soviet Union. And we've negotiated with hostages, depending on the scale, but there's a difference between releasing terrorists from Guantanamo Bay.
We've negotiated with hostages.
They're all suspect.
They're not terrorists. You haven't convicted them of anything.
And negotiating with other countries where we may have an interest, and that is certainly a proper role for the United States.
We gotta take a quick break. I do want to give Speaker Gingrich 30 seconds, and then...
Just very straightforward. Clifton and I did a film on Ronald Reagan. There's a very painful moment in the film when he looks in the camera and says, I didn't think we did this. I'm against doing it. I went back and looked. The truth is we did. It was an enormous mistake. And he thought the Iranian deal was a terrible mistake.
We're going to take a...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that did happen under the Reagan administration. A lot of people like to put him up as a superhero of presidents, but which he was a good president. But just like any other presidency, you can't account for everybody in your administration. You can't say that just because you're a good president or just because you have ideals that everybody in your cabinet or everybody in your administration will hold the same ideals. They might do some shady things. That's what happened. And Reagan did admit it. He said, I look in my heart and I thought we did the right thing, but the facts tell me differently. Something along those lines is pretty darn close to verbatim of what he said, which tells me he had good intentions. It turned out bad. He thought it wouldn't, and it did. It turned out bad. Anyways, I'm not trying to say Newt's right when it comes to all of his views, but I'm just saying Ron has been steadfast. Ron has been the best with his foundation on beliefs. So Everybody vote Ron Paul.